This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From Not a Pipe Publishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is ecosystem.
Salutations, hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Very excited about today's show. Today's guest is Miriam Gershow. Miriam is a novelist and story writer. Her latest book is Survival Tips, Stories out from Propeller Books on March 19th. So Survival Tips Stories, that is coming out in just, a few days after you are listening to this. And her first novel, The Local News, was a finalist for the Oregon Book Award, which here in Oregon, that those of you who don't know the Oregon Book Awards from literary arts, that's a big deal, and was very, very well received. And I can guarantee that it was on the top of my TBR pile because, as I've mentioned on the show before, we have two new puppies in my house, and they snagged it and chewed on it, but it is still entirely legible. So this is the next on my TBR pile. And you have another book, Closer, that comes out in June 2025. So you've got a lot coming out in a relatively short period of time in kind of the publishing world. This has got to be exciting.
It's super exciting. And it was 15 years between my first and second book sale. So it was waiting. I mean, you know this from both the author and the publisher side. Waiting. Oh my God. All of the sudden good news. Oh my God, all of the sudden more good news.
Yep. And even then the good news is still, oh my God, well, now we've got a year.
Now we've got a year.
Yeah.
Oh my God, now we've got a year. And people say, like, why is this taking 15 months to come out? And I'm like, 15 months is like lightning fast in publishing.
That's small press fast, and Regal House is bigger than Not a Pipe, so that they're pushing it.
How long does it take in Not a Pipe from the moment you acquire it to the moment you publish it?
Generally, it's a year, and that's really about 6 months of editing. I mean, really, I want to have it done 6 months before it comes out. And, so that we know, we are confident we're not going to be saying to anybody, here's this book that's going to be coming out. And then we have to say, oh, it's delayed. And we got that 6 months for, sending it out to blurbers and sending it out. And that's because as a very small press, it's unlikely we're going to get reviews anyway. Whereas I totally understand why the big presses are saying we need a year to get this into people's hands because we're going to get all these reviews and that kind of thing. So it can take a while. Folks don't understand the production kind of timeline is extensive.
It is. And what the nice thing is for both of the books, they're small edits for both. But it's delightful to sell something. People think, oh, you sell it and then you have to write it. And I'm like, no, it's written. Now it's just a party. Which,
I mean, is wonderful at this end. It's terrible on the other end when you're writing it on spec, going, is anyone ever going to read this thing?
So terrible.
It's going to get out into the world. It's a terrible model. And it's true in so many art forms too. I'm somebody's recording a song out there and somebody's painting a painting or creating a sculpture, never knowing, am I going to be compensated for this time at all? We'll see.
Is it ever going to get an audience? And it's so much just active faith. It's for so long. It's just an active faith and like your best attempt at positive self-talk.
Yes. Can I convince? Well, and that positive self-talk is a kind of forced delusion. Like, can I convince myself this is worthwhile?
Totally, especially when it's not worthwhile for a long time. Not to get too deep into writing stuff, but I think this is universally true along all art forms that it's crap before it's good.
Yeah. Is this thing going to have an audience? Because it shouldn't at this point, early on. I'm very grateful. And I encourage students, in this world of self-publishing, you can toss something out into the world way too soon. And I
Yeah.
encourage them, no, write your starter novel. Like write those books that no one will ever see. Don't toss your first thing out into the world.
Yes.
It's kind of a financial incentive structure to have 1,000 books out. And it's like, no, your first ones, you're not ready, and you don't want that
Right.
read by everyone until you've worked your way through, and that's a hard thing to hear when you've just written a novel. Like a novel is a momentous, it's a huge
R-
achievement, and then to have somebody
Right.
say your next one's going to be better,
And you're
know?
always as good as you're going to be. So whatever you finish, you're like, well, this is my best work. Like,
Right? Yeah. I mean,
how can I
people will say
not?
to me, I don't have you ever had people say to you, which of your books is your best? And I'm always saying, it better be the most recent.
Right.
I hope I'm not going downhill at all. But
Right.
yeah, that's but this will be so you'll have is the stories book short stories or a novel,
Short stories. Yeah. So, and those are like 20 years of stories. The first
right?
one I wrote was 23 years ago. Half of them are like new within the past 2 years, and half of them are 20 plus years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this speaks to what we were just saying. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they're like really braided together well. I'm like, oh, I really have been writing about the same things for
No, I
decades.
think that's a good thing. I've got my students right now in my sci-fi lit class reading Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, which
Oh,
works
yeah.
very well as a book and was the same thing. It was all, stories that he sold to different magazines and then braided them together because they fit. And so it's fun to see how that kind of comes together, almost inadvertently. But yeah, it is
Totally.
I'm excited to get to check that one out. How many of those had seen the light of day beforehand?
9 out of 10 had seen the light of day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some of them decades before.
Right.
Like the only people who've read the 9 of 10, I think, are my husband and my mother. For
Hmm.
everybody else, there should be surprises in there.
Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's the other thing is nobody has read them all, and so that'll be a fun one for folks to check out. So before we get too deep into things, this is going to be very confusing for viewers on YouTube because we've been having this, serious conversation about kind of the publishing process, and yet we have not told the podcast listeners how we're dressed right now. So tell everybody about this costume you have chosen to wear for the show.
Great. Thanks. For special occasions, which, I know the history of this pod, I knew it was dress up time.
Yeah.
So I always rummage through our abundant Oregon Country Fair box. And so Oregon Country Fair takes place, I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and in Veneta, Oregon, which is like 15 minutes from here, in the woods, there's this incredible miles and miles of land that is made into every summer the Oregon Country Fair, which is this hippie music food festival. People often think we're saying county fair. It's like
Yeah.
if you can envision the opposite of the county fair, there's lots of topless people of both genders. There is a lot of body painting. There is a lot of live music. There's such great crafts. And just the volunteers, of which I'm one who camp there and help, uh, the fair run for the 3 days of the fair. There's 15 or 20,000 just volunteers. And then tens of thousands of people come throughout the day. And one of the huge draws is the costumes. So I am wearing my giant brown tutu, which I bought at the fair and I wear every year at the fair. I'm wearing my silver sparkle tank top because I'm a big fan of sparkles. I am wearing my red cape and I am wearing my devil horns, which are wooden, made from our favorite wooden horn booth there,
Oh, how cool.
which wasn't there last year, which was very heartbreaking. And these are technically my son's, but all the fair clothes becomes communal. And then I'm wearing my fuzzy pink sunglasses. That is one of our new fair purchases from last year because every year you have to, refresh the costumes.
Step up your game.
Um, which may or may not last the whole podcast because they get really like tickly because they're fuzzy fur. So that was the one downside in our very exciting fair purchase last year. We were like, these are irritating to wear.
Yeah, yes. Well, and folks who are not from Oregon don't understand. Our summers are hot. Like it is very warm sometimes at the Oregon Country Fair.
Yes,
So I'm thinking the fuzzy might be might get a little old
totally.
after a few days there. Well, I went, there's this kind of saying in the goth community that like when you get to the most extreme goth, that's the pink goth. And so in that same vein, I went, okay, what would it be like to show up to Oregon Country Fair dressed as like a Victorian vampire? Like all the, other than being incredibly hot to be in like many, many layers, but like if you showed up at Oregon Country Fair in all black and just, like the goth guy at the country fair, I think that would be the next level up.
Absolutely.
Yes, folks who don't know what we're talking about, look up some images. I have heard that I have not been yet. I am excited to get to check it out, but I have heard that it is the kind of the starter for what's the one that takes place out in the desert?
Oh, Burning Man.
Yes, that this is your you go to Oregon Country Fair to prepare yourself for Burning Man. So if
I
you've
think
seen
that's right.
images of Burning Man, it's that in the woods,
Yeah,
which
I think it's like Oregon Country Fair is probably like 1% of Burning Man. I think it's good because you're covered in like on the years it doesn't rain, you're covered in dust and dirt from the paths by the end, which I think is very similar. And there's tons of creativity. Like the booths are all wooden booths that are like woven, the vendors' booths, and the stages, everything's woven into the natural environment. And then there are tons of people who put on parades that have like extensive matching costumes. There's folks on stilts year after year. It's like really, I mean, that's what the appeal to Burning Man would be to me, all the creativity. And there's definitely like tons of that at the fair.
yeah, and folks who are guessing, yes, there are lots of substances. It is many of the people are in altered states, and so something like Miriam's, sparkles have a different effect on different people who are wandering around, who are seeing those sparkles and suddenly are in a very different place, which is wonderful. Like that's the point of the whole thing for a lot of folks. But yeah, I am very excited to go check it out and
That's
just
great.
wander around and kind of try and take it all in. Like, I just think it would be a fun experience. How many years have you been?
Um, I've been on and off since 2000. I've been on and off since 2000. I've like, there was a summer I was very pregnant that I didn't go. There were summers that I taught in Santa Cruz that I didn't go. But once you get on a crew and I'm in the bus admissions crew, you like hold on to that spot for
Yeah.
dear life because that's what because then you get to stay overnight.
Well, that's the
That
big
gives
thing.
you the
Yeah,
camping pass.
volunteers get to stay, and I have heard that that is when it really
Exactly.
gets, wild is at night.
But if you're coming, come on Friday if you can, because
Okay.
that's the day, because some people are still working, that's the day that it's the quietest. It's sort of a crush of humanity in the middle of the day on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, Friday's the way to ease into it.
The way to
Just
ease into it, I mean, maybe you like a crush of humanity. And
I
in that
do, but my
case,
partner, I think, would go, "Oh my gosh, this is too many people." And so I think Friday is a good
totally.
call for us. Start
Yeah,
on Friday and then decide, hey, maybe next year we can do a Saturday. Maybe we can
totally.
handle that. So I've been very excited to have you on the show. You've got this new book coming out, but your last one came out in 2009. So since the local news, what have you been up to for the last 15 years?
That's such a good question. I like to conveniently blame the 15-year gap on parenting. I uh, I was pregnant between the hardcover and the paperback of the local
Oh, okay.
news. So I like birthed two babies at almost the exact same time, but that's not really true. Like I wrote all
Right.
through having a kid, even though it's nice to try to blame it all on him.
Yeah.
And I teach like you teach. I teach at the university level. I've been doing a lot of that, a lot of procrastinating, which we'll talk about. Um, but you know, it there was just this huge disconnection. Speaking of like the faith and the self-delusion, there was this huge disconnection between the writing and the publishing for years and
Uh,
years and years. So much so that like other people just sort of had to carry the faith for
yeah.
me for
Yeah.
years. And my husband was really good at that. It helps that he's not creative at all. Like I know a lot of creative couples and I think, oh, that's so nice and so sweet. But my husband isn't really invested in it beyond my aspirations. Like he he doesn't really care if I succeed in publishing or not, but he cares about it for me. So he was like a big, huge cheerleader. And a couple years ago, I was writing novel after novel after novel after novel, and they weren't selling. And a couple years ago is when I like went back to writing short fiction, and I discovered flash fiction, which is its own form with its own conventions and its own writing ecosystem. And it was sort of like a re like that new. I don't know if you write across genres or
I do.
anything, but that new like, oh my God, a new form, a new learning, a new audience, a new and a couple years of that is what really inspired the collection. So yeah, it was a long 15 years.
Yeah. Do you assign Flash to your students?
Well, I mostly teach like the writing 121, like the
Okay.
non creative writing, but yes, whenever I teach creative writing, I always lately the last couple times I've taught creative writing, we are on 10, are you on 10-week terms in your teaching?
We are on we're on semesters and quarters.
Yeah, semesters are much more sane. We are on 10-week terms at U of O, and so the last couple times we've read Flash, we've practiced Flash, and then the whole first workshop, which we can do in like 3 or 4 weeks, is Flash because it's like they can write. It's not that it's like so easy to write. It's got its own form and conventions, but I give them 2 pages and they come up with something and we can workshop it really quickly. And then we have like the traditional short story workshop in the last six
Yeah.
weeks.
Well,
It's really,
it's
oh,
easier for the peer editors too. That I find that that's really helpful. It's not so arduous to go, okay, I need to read 10 other people's stories. So I need to read 10 other people's Flash. Okay, I can do that
totally.
and, give them feedback. But I've really benefited from Flash in my long form. Like I think that not to get too processy on a show that's about procrastination, but that learning to trust the reader that you have to do in Flash because you can't say, I'm going to give you all this information. I'm counting on you to fill in the gaps. Is beneficial then when we're going back to the long form and saying, I learned to trust you better.
I totally agree. I find I am looking over a manuscript that is my, a novel in progress, and it's my shortest one by like 100 pages. And I find myself cutting, like, I don't need this line.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, not to get too processy, but I write logistics to like, I sometimes like get down to like what direction they're facing and how they're moving there. And I'm thinking, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody needs this. They don't need to know if the hand was moving like this or like, just
Yeah.
I,
I
I,
overdo facial expressions and that kind of thing during conversation. And then I have to say to myself, I don't need to provide a description of the reaction to everything everyone said. The reader can infer this is the way this character
right. It's
based on
like
the
the early
dialogue.
version of how you'd put an adverb and like, you'd say
Yes.
she said
Yes.
sneakily, he
Confusingly.
said mysteriously.
Yes. Yes. Cut those. Cut those. You don't need them. Yes. Incredulously. Of course it was incredulously. That's the only way she could have said those words. Like, um, did you find that there was a transition more? So you were working on novels during this 15 years and then more short fiction. I could imagine it going the other way around, but there were some novels during that time.
It did originally, like I came out of my master's program in fiction, like so many writing short stories. And so for years, there's a different version of Survival Tips that was all short stories, no flash. That was my first unsold book. And then I wrote a novel because that's what everyone tells you to do when you're in the business of publishing. And then it was sort of like a return to form of like, oh, flash fiction is like stories again, except the big difference this time, which was so reassuring to me, is I always struggled with endings of short stories. But with Flash, I was like, oh, here I am coming back 20 years later, and I think I have a lot more of a sense of what I want to say because I'm able to like end these 2-page stories. Because I think not knowing how to end for me is not knowing what I'm saying.
Mm, yeah. For me, not knowing how to end is often not trusting the reader enough to go, I don't need to explain the ending. The end, it
Oh,
ends where it ends, and then I would overwrite. And so Flash helped me go, no, it can just stop where it really needs to end, and I don't need to add, this denouement that's too much not tying, and so that was
yes.
key for me.
That's so great. I used to say I could cut every last paragraph of every chapter, and I think you just diagnosed why that's the case.
Yeah, it was a lack of trust. My readers know they, and so
Yes.
finding that kind of respect for the reader and saying this is not, and it's in some ways maybe it's more challenging for you and I because as teachers we get into the mode of it is my job to make sure you understand, and then as writers we have to
Right.
go, no, you're my peer. This is not, I am not writing to a student.
Do you think that you don't trust your ending? Are you like, is there any of the mistrust for yourself?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. And one of my tendencies, and I'll bet listeners have even picked up on this. I used to teach English as a second language,
Mhm.
and one of my good habits is I will say things three times with three different levels of vocabulary, which is great for second language learners. They're getting to hear it three different ways. It is incredibly annoying to other adults who are native English speakers. And so, yes, it's that. Am I being understood? Am I sure I'm being understood? I'm not positive. I don't have the confidence to know I got this idea across. So I'll say it five more times. No,
Yes.
this is done. It is clear. This person understands.
I teach grad students how to teach the 100 level writing classes. And the thing that I say, so it feels to me like the biggest fear of new teachers is they're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you are going to
Yeah.
make many, but teaching is so reiterative. Everything you say in teaching, you say over and over in the next class, in the next 15 minutes, in the next class, the next week. Like you're constantly, you have a million chances. So you're right. It's like the opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the opposite, but it's somewhere on the end of a spectrum.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's like that super polished lesson that you get to where they get it. And you've done this 1,000 times. You don't need to say it 500 ways. You know this is excellent,
Right.
probably because at some point you stole some brilliant insight from a student. And so, now this is the 100th time you've taught this lesson. You want the novel to read that way. Rather than I'm
Yes.
trying this thing out for the first time and I don't know. And so we're just going to keep going over this until I've beaten it into
Right.
your heads. That was an insecure first year teacher habit.
Yes.
And now I'm like I can pick where that aha moment will be in this particular lesson,
Yes.
not because of because I've done it so many times. I
Right.
know when that moment is that kids will go, oh.
Yes, totally.
Um,
What age do you teach?
so I've got freshmen and then juniors and seniors.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I teach freshman English, and that way my colleagues say, "Thank you so much for taking the freshman. You can teach whatever you want." And then I get to
Awesome.
teach creative writing and science fiction lit. So it's the dream job.
I would love for, I mean, so two things. One, you and I teach such similar ages because
Yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
only a year later with
yeah,
them. But I would like freshman writers for the same reason that I like freshmen in college. Like I love the scared in a new environment writer because I think that you can access vulnerability so much more easily.
yeah. It really is a wonderful age. My freshmen come in and they are, frightened, and they are trying to, position themselves
Yeah.
socially, and they're really concerned with questions of identity, which is wonderful in a language arts class. We spend a lot of time talking about who are you, which is something they're very concerned about. And then over the course of the year, they gain confidence. I get to see that. And by the end of the year, they've really come to this, great place. Meanwhile, I've got the seniors who start off the year feeling confident. They know what's going on with themselves. They've learned to navigate this space. And by the end of the year, they're checked out. So my year kind of balances really well because
Yes.
at the end of the year, they're like, I've already gotten accepted into the University of Oregon. I don't, none of this
Yeah.
matters to me anymore. And my freshmen are like,
Yes.
I am on it and I want to learn Shakespeare now,
That's
so
so
it
great.
balances well.
That's a good balance. And I know do you have one or two kids?
I've got just the one. Yeah,
Okay, who's
he's at your rival. He's at the at Oregon
uh,
State right now.
oh, good, because I have an eighth grader who is, did you have this with your son? I have an eighth grader who is like ready for senior skip month. Like he's having the middle school version of what I
Yes.
anticipate happening in 4 more years.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, he will have a really fun experience. You will enjoy watching him make that transition from I've got this all figured out. I'm an eighth grader and I understand the way everything works to, you know, the beginning of the year next year. Oh my gosh, they're all giant. It's terrifying. You know,
Terrifying.
I haven't figured
Right.
out the kind of the rules, the slang. How does this work in this new space? And then
Right.
he'll figure it out and it doesn't take 4 years. By the end of the year, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm back to feeling confident." But yeah,
Yes.
that first part of, and I'm really open with my students about, hey, remember, you are coming in from the middle school, and so it seems to you like you don't know anyone, but actually, you know a lot more people you are meeting today than I do.
Oh,
I'm
that's
meeting 90
nice.
new people. This is terrifying for me. You know,
Oh, I
and they're
love
like,
that
"Oh,
so
that is
much.
nice."
That's great. That's so great.
Yeah, we have fun. I love my kids. It's good.
Me too.
So, what has been pulling, we talked about the work itself, but what's been pulling you away in terms of pop culture lately?
Okay, so this is excellent timing for this podcast because I am in peak Love is Blind mode.
I have not. I don't know Love is Blind.
I feel like that's probably good. Um, so I am a fan of all like really, really terrible dating reality shows.
Hmm.
I'm a fan of bad reality shows, generally speaking. And I think that there are some good ones too. Like Survivor is what first pulled me in years and years ago, which I think is a legitimately good and interesting show. Love is Blind is not legitimately good. It's crappy. Do you know the premise?
No.
Okay, this is so great to be able to talk about it to a newbie. I think 15 men and 15 women go into these like separate living situations. The hosts are Vanessa and Nick Lachey.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and these are all people who haven't had success dating in real life. They go into this row of 15 pods. The men go in their side, the women go in their side, and there's a wall separating you. So you have 10 days to date people through this wall. So you never see them. So
Oh my
this is the
gosh.
whole Love is Blind thing. And so you have 10 days and they have all these conversations and they have dates through the walls and they like each slowly narrow. And then the premise is if you fall in love with someone in the pods, you can propose to
Oh
them.
my
And
gosh.
it's always, always, always the men. There's never a woman propose. Like there's so much that's not good about these shows. It's
Yeah.
always the men proposing. They get on the knee behind the pod, and then the women accept, and then they reveal, and they meet each other. They reveal each other. Like they run through this hallway, like the doorways come up, and they run through this hallway and meet, and then they leave and they go on a honeymoon, and then they go home for a month, and they either have to get married at the end of the month or never see each other again.
Oh my gosh. So it's almost gladiatorial, like we are watching an abomination.
Totally. Um, it is so problematic
Right. Yes.
and terrible. And like Netflix will release like the first 6 episodes, and I will be like, oh my God, the new season's coming. This is like my day. I have to do all my grading. I have to get everything
Yeah.
done because this is all I'm going to do. And the people are, I have a friend who won't watch it because of the like how much I almost called them characters, how much the real life people say like it drives her crazy. So she can't watch it for that reason, but it's all edited and manipulated so juicily that I'll binge it all. But now there's like an ecosystem. Now there's all these podcasts
Yeah.
about it. There's all these recap websites, there's podcasts to interview the people who are on it. So, it only comes out every Wednesday, but
Yeah.
I cleaned the house yesterday and the finale was last Wednesday and the reunion is the upcoming Wednesday. And I like cleaned the house for 3 hours yesterday only listening to recaps of the finale.
Do the people uh, try and describe the way that they look, or is that kind of verboten?
Okay. The big controversy good question, by the way. The big controversy this season is one of the contestants asked the guy she was talking to if he resembles any celebrity, if he gets told he resembles any celebrity, and he doesn't really answer. And she says that she resembles Megan Fox. So, and people were like up in all the recap shows were up in arms
She
because they're
doesn't
like, she doesn't look like Megan Fox. But here's what I learned from the podcasts of former contestants that everybody does that. They said this is the only time they caught it on film, but that everybody does stuff like that, even though you're not supposed to.
I
But
would imagine. Yeah.
right. How could you not? How could you
Yeah.
not?
But I mean, but it is interesting because our self-perception is so inaccurate anyway that somebody trying to describe themselves is going to do a I mean, I would say, kind of like Golem meets the chameleon from the Spider-Man comics. Like which
I
would not
mean,
do well for my dating life.
here's one problem, not problem. They're all incredibly conventionally attractive,
Right.
which I think is actually better than like people say, oh, you should stop doing that. But I think like, okay, that would turn into a really cruel
It would
show.
be a train wreck. Yeah, that would
It
just
would be a train wreck. So they're all very conventionally attractive. And the woman who described herself as looking like Megan Fox didn't necessarily, but she was a very attractive, telegenic, television ready person.
yeah. Yeah, so it's not, I mean, unless the person that she is, telling this to is so incredibly superficial that, he's going to go, "Oh my gosh, you're not, because you said that, I'm only going to date a brunette and you're blonde or whatever." Like
Right.
it's, he'll go, "Okay, that's not really how I would describe you, but it's going to be fine."
That's basically what he did. But as you can imagine, none of the contestants are like the hardiest, deepest, emotionally complete human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and how old are they? I'm guessing these are people who are all like, in their mid 20s and they've
Yeah,
failed at dating for a whole 4 years. Like
it ranges from like mid 20s, shockingly, to early 30s, who are like, spinsters, of course.
right. Right. The dating world has been so impossible for them at 28
Totally.
years old. Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, that does sound, yeah, the ecosystem itself sounds like a lot of fun too. Like people would
Totally.
form communities. Like this is our community where we, hate watch this or love it or,
I know. Totally. Totally. Mhm.
and within that community, are there shows where it's, very clear this is a show that is a podcast that is destroying this, and this is one that is hagiographic, and then there's this kind of span in between.
There is, I'm not into the ones that just tear them apart. There probably are. I do like the ones that are like doing a feminist critique of it.
Yeah.
And there's definitely that, like ones that podcasts that exist just to talk about the gender roles in it. And I was listening to one yesterday about race in it because there was interracial couples, a Black couple who ended up shockingly dealing with all these things about generational trauma that I was like, I can't believe Love is Blind is handling this well, but
Right,
they
right.
were. So those are really interesting to me, but it's sort of like, I think I don't love the ones that just tear it apart because obviously any of us could tear this
Right,
apart. It's like such low-hanging fruit,
right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. So when is the finale?
The finale was last Wednesday.
Oh.
Ben, if you watched it, we could talk about which couples ended up
I
together
didn't
and
do my
which
homework.
didn't.
I could have been prepared.
But here's the exciting part. The reunion is next Wednesday. So that's when a year later, we're going to find out who's still together.
Who's made it? Which of
Who's
these
made it.
relationships, which were built on such a strong foundation,
Exactly. Exactly.
survived? Oh, Yeah, that it is. I mean, it's scheduled train wrecks. Like, hey, they're going to meet, and that may go terribly. Hey, they're
Yeah,
going to be together for a month. That may go terribly, and then we'll have the reunion show where we'll find out which thing went terribly.
totally. And I don't know, what is your media for this? I love when I like writing is very, very absorbing to me. Like I'm all in. So I like media that I can get obsessed. Like I like the one that there's like no way I'm not clicking next. Like, of course I'm watching the next episode.
Yeah,
Just auto load it. I'm not going to stop. So I like getting all wrapped. That's part of like the ecosystem. Like I like being obsessed with something.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what's your media? What's the thing you like
I
being
mean, for
obsessed
me, it's, a fantasy and science fiction stuff where you can immerse yourself in a world, and you're like, I need to check out of this world because, in this world, it's a little much for me right now. But I can go pick up, Tasman Muir's, Gideon the Ninth, and then Hera the Ninth, and I can just live in that world for a
Yeah.
while, and it's a mess, but in a different way, you know.
Yes.
And so, yeah, a lot of, I think the impulse towards, that kind of really deep world building kind of
Yes.
fiction is the same one that pulls people into reality. I mean, even something like
Totally.
Survivor, we watch Survivor and we're going, okay, I understand the kind of rules of this universe, and it's difficult for us to step back and go, wait, these people have been transported to an island where people have lived for thousands of years just fine, and
Yes.
we're watching and going, oh my gosh, it would be so impossible to live on this place, and it's like
Totally.
it is this other reality that
Yes.
has been superimposed. So there's an element to fantasy, to Survivor,
Oh,
to
totally.
so a little more grim. What's been pulling you away in terms of news?
Yeah, it is more grim, isn't it? I think the same things that are pulling so many people away. Like I feel heartbroken about Gaza.
Yeah.
I feel heartbroken because I can't reduce it to a soundbite for
Yes.
myself. I think October 7th was an atrocity and war crimes. And I think Gaza is atrocity upon atrocity. And like, I feel of two minds about it. One, there is clearly to me an immediate right thing to do, which is a releasing of hostages and a ceasefire.
Right.
Like, no question, that's the right thing to do. But I think beneath that is so much complication of how is this ever going to be resolved? And then the other thing that feels like the thing that feels extra difficult now is this friggin' presidential election backdrop of this. Like, how are we going to wield our political system to listen to us around this stuff, given how big our role is? So the only good thing that I can think about, like the only thing that's giving me hope right now are uncommitted voters who are trying to sway public policy, because I think I don't know how you feel about this, but the whole when people say like, "Oh, are you unhappy about the system? Use your vote," as if the system can heal itself.
Yeah.
When I think so many parts of the system are fundamentally broken, except when I started seeing the uncommitted vote, I thought, "Oh, yeah, look, people are working within the system in an organized way, and I don't even agree with everyone. Like, I find so few people that I think, oh, I 100% agree with your policy position on this. Um, so, like, I think it's hard to hold all of it, even for me, for everyone. But I'm like, this is an organized block saying this is not, I agree that this is not good current policy. And already you see the Biden administration shifting their rhetoric and
Yep.
hopefully their policy too. So I've been really impressed with the uncommitted vote.
Yeah,
folks.
I agree. I think the key there, the thing that I admire is the organization, that it is not just, people saying, I'm gonna, throw a vote away, for a Jill Stein in,
Yeah,
2016, out of kind of petulance and not really having thought through the consequences. This is folks who, in a thoughtful way, said, how can we get the necessary votes to shift policy?
yeah,
And I do find that admirable, and also people who are getting involved. I was just messaging with somebody in a group chat who's a labor organizer who was saying, how can I get more involved in my union to then have my union take a stand and pressure, and so that it's not this kind of passive. I'm going to throw out a hot take tweet and be angry and say I don't care who wins in the next presidential election because I'm
right.
so angry. Like that's lazy. How can you get involved and make things happen and persuade? I think we've hopefully kind of learned the lesson of the kind of Bernie bro, like we lost and now we're just angry,
Yes,
and okay, get involved and make change. And that does give me some hope. I think also
yeah,
that we have a hard time looking at a situation this complex and not saying, I am mad that this one person didn't fix it. Like, there's no
yeah,
way that any politician in the United States can magically solve a crisis in, Israel, where you've got Hamas is not a legitimate partner. Much
right,
of Bibi Netanyahu and half of his cabinet are not legitimate partners to be
right.
discussing things with. The Palestinian civilians are trapped in the middle,
Yeah,
and nobody can just go, hey, I'm going to wave a wand and solve this problem. And so I think it's
right.
legitimate for people to be upset that policy isn't pressuring, but also they should have some recognition that even when the policy is pressuring and in the way that they want to pressure, this situation will not be magically solved because the parties involved have their own internal pressures to maintain their power base. And, Hamas
Yeah,
doesn't want this to go away, and Bibi Netanyahu doesn't want this to go away,
yes. Yeah,
which is awful.
yeah, and it is interesting how much people are understanding US complicity in this because that's not often transparent
Right.
to the public.
Yeah.
I'm from Detroit and I felt really impressed by the organizing there. This is one of those times, I mean, writers not writing. What am I doing when I'm not writing? I am scrolling social media
Yeah.
incessantly.
Yes.
But it does feel like, um, let's not mistake social media outrage for collective organizing,
Yes.
because so much of the outrage on social media, like, I don't think it's performative because I think people are outraged. I think social media destroys nuance.
Yes.
You cannot look at something in a layered, it just ends up feeling demoralizing.
Yeah, and you cannot even be attacked for implying there's nuance. I mean, nobody is
Yeah.
tweeting, this is complicated, and I feel like it's really difficult. That is something that will be attacked. No,
Yes.
it's not complicated. No, it really
Right?
is very complicated. This is difficult for me.
Yes.
I have, complex feelings about it, and I don't even feel that I can express that,
Yes.
because it is not, the kind of issue where people want an easy answer. And I
Yeah.
just, they're going to be sorely disappointed. No easy answer is going to solve this crisis. That being said, it needs to be solved quickly. Like
Yeah.
people, losing their lives is binary, and that
Yeah.
cannot wait. And so I understand that feeling of urgency people have, but yeah, it is incredibly depressing to know it's nuanced.
It is incredibly depressing. And I do think there's something unique about being a Gen X Jew looking at this because, so my parents' generation, my parents were cognizant of the Holocaust as teenagers when it was happening. My mom, one of the survivors of the Holocaust from our family, came and lived with my mom and her family as he grew up, and or he was a late teenager when he came. So it's so immediate. So understandably to me, there's almost a black and white understanding of Israel and Zionism. I get that. I totally get that. I respect it. We've argued about it most of my life. Gen X Jews, like, we're post we grew up with Holocaust survivors. We know Holocaust survivors. We learned about it. It's very present in our mind, but it's not the same
No.
as being alive at the time. Um, and so, and we grew up with the existence of Israel and Palestine. So it's like there's a generation of us who've been struggling with this our whole lives. Like no matter how close or not close we feel towards Israel, no matter how much, and I'm neither religious nor observant, but I
Same,
culturally
non-practicing
identify.
of Jewish descent. Like, yes. Well, and I also
Right.
think our generation grew up very much thinking about the Holocaust in terms of, I think my grandparents' generation, my parents' generation grew up thinking the Holocaust is about protecting Jewish people. And our generation grew up thinking preventing the Holocaust is about preventing genocides for other groups of people. And then it puts us in this really difficult place when we're going, wait a second, I am watching the IDF do something that fits the definition I would employ for any other group. And that's
Totally.
really, really hard to square that circle and
It,
square it cross-generationally.
it is. And it's also what makes it difficult to hear. It's what makes the vitriol difficult
Yes.
because I feel like, I mean, the vitriol totally makes sense. Like we are seeing things that are unbearable. And we saw things on October 7th that are unbearable. And I honestly can't imagine what it's like to live. Well, I certainly can't imagine what it's like to live in Gaza, and I can't imagine what it's like to live in Israel, and I don't pretend to. Um, but it's hard I think of all the situations where I've come to it late, where I haven't been thinking about it for 50 years, and I just spew my. It's hard to hear sort of sloganeering
Right.
from people who've never been in the conversation before, as much as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the, kind of facts that I try and hold in mind, like I don't want to be doing the whataboutism thing. Like that is, I think that is dangerous and disingenuous.
Totally.
And yet I am intimately aware of the fact that, the United States was complicit in the exact same way, supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia, just a few years ago when 150,000 people in Yemen were being slaughtered. And we didn't have the same discussion. Like it was not treated as a genocide in which the United States was complicit. And so
Yeah.
there is something that needs to be where we need to reckon with the fact that we are treating this kind of activity very differently, in this case, and why, and, reflect on that and say,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean to say, therefore, we will do the same thing we did with Saudi
Right.
Arabia and tolerate it and ignore it.
Right.
But, you know, this, we're going to be very upset about this situation. And yet when 150,000 Muslims are killed in Yemen, we're
Yeah.
going to go, okay, that's not, our area that we are concerned about.
Right. Or it's not even in our
Yeah.
consciousness. It does the as you were saying that, I was thinking, oh God, I think the truth of so many Americanized Jews is like the possibility that I don't want to reckon with is that it with this along with all the along with the atrocities that we're seeing, that there's a strain of anti-Semitism that this awakens, that people can jump on this in a particular way, which of course it's like how our strains of racism and sexism, like how all of this is sort of exists in us in a cellular level. But I haven't had to think about it like, you know, in the Trump era has awakened all this anti-Semitism in ways that I never had to. I could be in denial about it in the
I'm
United
I'm
States.
I'm not Jewish presenting. I'm not observant. I'm not attending synagogue, and so I don't have to think. The anti-Semitism kind of snuck up on me, where people were like saying horrible things online, and I was like, how did you even know? Like, because
Right.
yeah, I mean, it has bubbled up in this really interesting, awful way, but it does. Then you're right. It changes the way that we see this because we're going, what is this going to lead to here at home? And I don't
Yeah.
think we, confronted other genocides around the world in the same way. We didn't go, oh,
Right.
well, if I respond to what's happening in Myanmar, somebody may target me. And
Right.
so, yeah,
Right.
that's, yeah, it's a lot.
It
Um,
is a lot. And like American Jews haven't, you could argue that this is like what Jews for millennia have dealt with, but it does feel like post-war, or no, it feels like all of my lifetime, this just is a privilege that we've had, as
right,
like we can just be like, oh, I'm American.
right, right. Yep.
Not so much.
And to some extent deceiving ourselves. Like the anti-Semitism that we didn't see was there.
Right.
We just didn't have to see it because, much like as white people, we didn't have to see before the advent of the cell phone camera, the day-to-day treatment by the police
Right.
of our neighbors. We just didn't see it. And so it didn't matter, right? And the anti-Semitism, we didn't hear it. And
Yeah.
now it's like, oh, this has always been there.
This has
And
always been
now
there.
I'm nervous, very, actively nervous about what comes as a consequence of this. And yet
Right.
I don't
And
want to let that compromise my principles in saying this should not be happening.
totally, totally. It's some amount of sort of like hubris or denial or nationalism that's like, oh, I'm a white American.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, not so.
Yeah, 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 and not, and I don't get to simply, determine my identity and then determine that that is safe for me. Like,
Right.
that's a rough thing to realize. Like, oh wait, my identity could make other people hate me. I have not had to live with that on a day-to-day basis the way so many people have, and now I'm going, oh wait, I don't get to control the way other people feel about, this particular identity of mine, and that's
It's very sobering.
yeah. So, when you are overwhelmed by all of this, do you have any hobbies that you can escape to, other than, in addition to Love is Blind?
Okay, in addition to Love is Blind, okay, one thing I'm going to do visuals for, I'm sorry for the people, I'll describe it though, for
Yes, we'll
people
have
who
to
are
describe it
listening.
for the podcast listeners.
Okay. I really like to knit.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I'm always cold and I'm not very good at knitting. Um, so I really envy those writers who are like, I'm a writer and also I'm in this rock band because I can sing, or also I do dancing, or also I am this master knitter. I am not. Writing is like the one thing I'm an expert in. And then I'm always an advanced beginner knitter and I'm always cold. So I make this one pattern of blanket. So this is like a velveteen.
I was
This
going to
one
say,
I
it's
did during
beautiful. It came out
COVID.
really well. It looks incredibly soft.
It's so soft, but then so my current one is the exact same pattern in a really thick fuzzy. So for people listening to the podcast, this is not shiny. This is a fuzzy, like gray, super thick. So I'm always just knitting blankets because I'm cold.
And do you keep them all, or are these like gift items?
Some
Or
are gifts. Some are gifts. I do keep a number of them. But I've made my son, I finally said to my son, do you need another blanket? And he's like, I think I'm good because
yeah,
I've made him a lot of
very dear.
blankets.
I can tell you right now, if you were to put one of those in the Willamette Writers auction, my partner would be absolutely freaking out to get
Okay,
another
well,
very
I'll
soft
totally
blanket.
do it.
Yes, she is. If there is a soft blanket to be found,
Yeah,
she would be bidding on that one.
right.
Yes, folks who I haven't mentioned this, but folks who follow us both on social media may be aware we're both on faculty at this summer's Willamette Writers. You're one of the master class folks, and
Yes.
I am excited about that conference this summer. The Willamette Writers is this wonderful statewide, well, it goes into Southern Washington as well, regional organization for writers. And how did you get involved with doing that master class?
Okay, so the executive director of Willamette Writers is Kate Ristow, and she and I used to share an office together when we
Oh,
were both adjuncts at the U of O. She since left, but Willamette Writers, I sort of feel like it's in the vein of like, especially in the Willamette Valley. So the Willamette Valley is the Western Valley in Oregon, where all the big cities are. And Willamette Writer, I mean, their model is really brilliant. They have chapters run by volunteers with monthly meetings. So I feel like, how did I get involved? I don't know. I
yeah.
must have ended up just like going to the southern, I think ours is like the Southern Willamette Valley chapter. And then I think their conferences, they do a really amazing job at their conference. I started presenting at that years ago, on and off, but it feels like it brings a really great cross section of published writers, folks who are doing this as a hobby, folks who are like, who have published but still consider themselves really early career. It's just a great festive meeting up of writers in the Portland Hotel.
I tell folks it's my Christmas. Like this is the most fun. I get to go be with my people. I have a
Yeah.
blast every year because you're surrounded by all these people who are interested in writing, and like you say, they're in very different places, and
Totally.
they're incredibly respectful and welcoming of one another. And so when I started off, I was I think the first time I went, I had a manuscript, and I thought this would be a great place to meet agents, which it is. They bring in a
Yes.
whole bunch of agents, but the real benefit to me were all the other writers I met who were in the same place
Agreed.
and that yeah, so highly recommend folks put that in your calendar, and Miriam and I will see you there.
That'd
And
be
then
great.
so when you're not knitting, what else are you doing down there in the greater Eugene area?
I really like being inside, but we live like a block from this great walking trail that is flat and beautiful and right next to a creek. There's like no, there's nothing you could object to about it. So on the best day, I'm like inside writing or grading, and then I go and
Yeah.
walk for an hour. Um, and I'm always like, I'm going to do this every single day.
Uh-huh. Right.
And I don't, but more days than not, I'm out there, any weather. You have to be able to walk in the rain if you're an Oregonian.
Yes, yes. Well, and I mean that I have been to every state in the union, and I chose to live in Oregon very much on purpose. Like it is a beautiful place, incredibly green, and I love that to be. But you have to like rain. Like I am
Yeah.
grateful for the rain. That's why we get the green. But it is it is rainy. But yeah, being able to go out and say I'm going to step away from this work temporarily and go
Yes.
and how nice to be that close.
It's really
Just hey,
nice.
just down the street, I'm gonna get to step
Yes.
out into beautiful nature.
I felt very lucky during the pandemic because you're so, we're not in a high density area. We're across from a school. We're a block from walking. We can walk to everything. It's really nice.
Yeah. So one of the questions I always like to ask authors is if you were in a totally different universe, like a Dungeons and Dragons universe, what would be your race and class? It's kind of a Rorschach about you. So what would be your race and class if you were in Dungeons and Dragons?
Okay, this is great. I knew this question was coming because I listened to the pod. So my 14-year-old has a lot more experience with tabletop games than I do. So I consulted, and he said gnome sorcerer. And the reason I'm a gnome
Gnome
sorcerer is
sorcerer.
because I have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. So that was gnomic, apparently.
Yes.
And sorcerer, because it was the only one that doesn't fight.
Hmm.
It uses magic, and I indeed would like lose pretty badly in a fight.
Yes, not the physical fighting type.
Yeah,
Yes.
not the physical fighting type. And I felt happy. I felt happy with that outcome.
Yes. So, to explore that, you're wandering through the woods and you are attacked by three level one goblins. These are not particularly dangerous threats. How do you respond?
Okay, again, I consulted with my son on what I would do in this scenario, and it was two-headed. One, run away. But then I defended myself. I'm like, but I'm a sorcerer. I'm going to turn around as I'm running away, and I'm going to do like a freeze spell. Can I do
Yes.
is there a freeze
Oh,
spell?
yes. Freeze, hold person. You've got some different options
Okay,
there.
great. I'm gonna do whatever it is to stick them in their tracks.
Yes, there you go. And run away. I'm not obligated to exchange punches with these
Right.
goblins. Oh,
Yeah.
that is great. Perfect. So, what do you think that reveals about you as a writer?
Ooh, oh my God, that's such a good question. I do I run away? I don't think I run away from a fight in writing. Well, I think I do have a lot of energy and enthusiasm for it. as I get older, the energy and enthusiasm in life wanes, but it's still there in the
Right.
writing. I don't think I run away from a fight in writing. I think I do everything I can to bring the gnomes and goblins together
Mm.
so that I can make something happen.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the freezing and hold person, I'm thinking about the writing of yours that I've read, your concern for character, like I could imagine you freezing and holding person to examine them carefully.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally. And my fights are not usually like knockdown dragouts. My
yeah,
fights are usually much more like intrapsychic,
yeah.
like people sort of struggling with each other without coming out and saying it. Like the reader can see the struggle more. Maybe everybody's frozen in some way.
Frozen people. Yeah,
Ooh, that's a
yeah,
good one.
yeah. That's okay. So, we're gonna go to our ad break real quick, but when we come back, I'm gonna ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Great.
Special announcement time. Not a Pipe Publishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone 10,000 views on YouTube. So, to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60-second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the Not a Pipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
An Accidental Hero, a mostly true wombat story by Laura Rediger and Debbie Palin, is based on events during the aftermath of the Australian bushfires in 2020. Rescuers discovered animals sheltering in wombat burrows. Wombats were praised for providing a safe refuge underground. While they didn't invite other wildlife into their homes, they did truly become accidental heroes. The book is written as a newscast, with koala and emu at the news desk. Field reporter Kangaroo introduces readers to Wombat and her new friends. An Accidental Hero, a mostly true wombat story by Laura Rediger and Debbie Palin. A STEM picture book published by iFrig Publishing, available at ifrigpublishing.com or wherever books are sold. For more about the author, go to lauraredigerbooks.com.
Hi, I'm British author Keith Anthony Baird, and I'm interrupting your broadcast to let you know that my publisher, Bridget's Press, are releasing my latest book in May. Now, it's a dystopian cyberpunk novella called Synthetica. Loose premises, it's about an ex-Marine who is now a bounty hunter in a futuristic Tokyo. So if that's something you might be interested in, the good news is that it's on pre-order all the way until May 21st. So if you are wanting a Kindle version, you can download it on pre-order for just 99 cents. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
So, Miriam, welcome back. What have you been daydreaming about lately?
Okay. My number one daydream is coffee because I have had to give it up because I'm middle-aged and have a sensitive gut now. And so I think about it literally all the time. Like I keep going back to it and then having problems. And then for like a week after I've given it up, I think, oh my God, it's so good that my digestive system, I'm so mature and healthy. I'm like a grown-up. I don't need this. And then it only lasts for a week. After a week, I'm like, oh, can't. So I wake up and I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a cup of coffee? Or I go out, like wherever I am out in the world, I think like, oh, is there a Starbucks nearby so that I can go get an espresso? But like, I just need to fantasize. I just need to constantly fantasize about it and then let it go. Like if I try to not daydream, but here's what I daydream about. Oh, the mug of it. Oh, the nice mug of it. Oh, that taste. Oh, it goes so well. Oh, it goes so well with writing,
Yeah.
like writing. And it's also, I fantasize about how much it energizes me.
do you find yourself deceiving yourself in about quantity, where you say, I can just have one. I can just have one.
Totally.
Yeah.
If there's any addictive behavior that you can think of, I do that with coffee.
Yeah.
Compromises, bargaining, all of it, all of it.
Yes.
I love it. And if any of your listeners know of a caffeinated tea that gives you the same charge as caffeinated coffee, I want to hear it, because I've tried so many highly caffeinated teas and they're not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a different experience. It's a different kind of, and once you've associated all these things with coffee, comfort and all that, saying I reject the comfort because I'm going to have tea, that's a change, that's
Yeah.
very real.
Or I would also take suggestions for things that taste like coffee. Nothing do you know anything like coffee that tastes like coffee?
Yeah, I'm not a coffee person, so anything that tastes like coffee for me is out. I'm like, oh, a coffee flavored Jelly Belly? No. I mean, I've never gotten into coffee, but I
Wow.
have no
Okay.
class. Like I'm drinking my
What?
Mountain Dew here.
Oh, is that how you wake up? Is that what you use to wake
This
up?
is how I keep up with 14-year-olds is, Mountain Dews all day
Right.
long. It's terrible. This has like as much sugar as a candy bar, and I'm having like 6 of them a day. It's awful. It absolutely will catch up with me at some point, but so far it's keeping me, as wired as the kids, and that's the key.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I try and I have tried to give it up, and I'll switch to water, and then I'll go, I can just have one. And then
Yes.
I can now buy a 12 pack because now I'm pacing myself, and so I'll be fine. And then I'm right back to
Yeah.
drinking them, one right after the other. Yeah. And as writers, like in a way, that lack of self-discipline isn't all bad. Like if you love writing, I can just write a little bit. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
I wrote for
totally.
7 hours. Like that's great.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. If we can channel it in the correct direction, it's awesome.
Yeah. So, you have some announcements. Where can people learn about all the stuff that's going on with you? Because it's a lot all at once.
Yeah, I am really excited I really, really hustled to put together a book tour because
I was
I
impressed. As a
am
publisher, I was looking at that list of events and I was like, why can't all of my authors do this? You have a bunch of wonderful events planned.
yeah, I'm really excited. I am like, for years when I wasn't publishing, I was like, I just want the rock star. I just want the rock star tour. And I was really clear. I just want the hometown book reading,
Yeah.
right? Because nothing's as good as like your home. It's like a wedding where you gather all your people.
Yeah. Well,
So
well,
I've
it's
put
good.
together
That's,
a bunch of events, in bookstores and libraries. I hit the libraries. Reached out to a bunch of libraries because I think libraries are totally magical.
Yes.
And they do so much for the community, and the community already gathers there. I don't know if non-writers know about this, but when you put together a bookstore reading, you really have to hustle
Oh my gosh, yes.
to get people in the door. But libraries do that hustling. So anyway, I have events all over Oregon right now. I have I have one in Washington. And then I'll have more in Washington, and I hope this summer to have ones in the Midwest. But if you go to my website, www.miriamgershow.com. Should I spell it?
Yes, yeah, spell that out.
Okay. Miriam, that's Miriam, Gershow, GERSHOW.com, miriamgershow.com. It's got
And
an
we will link
events
to that in the
page.
show notes too. So if you're listening on your, podcast reader and you're going, I didn't catch that, scroll down. It'll be, hyperlinked. Click there and go immediately.
Awesome. And there's an events page, and there's some events on the homepage. And I don't think writers should read. I'll be interested in what you think of this. I think 10 or 15 minutes is the maximum.
Yes.
There's nothing I hate more than going to a reading where the writer like reads the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I think it's boring. I
It's
think that
hard.
you should be. So I have a whole bunch of bag of tricks to entertain people that are not reading from my work, and this goes to teaching too. I like participatory.
Yeah.
I like audience participation. I like getting folks thinking and active. So there'll be lots of fun at the readings.
Yeah, I remind myself, I have to consciously remind myself in class, this kid over here, it loves writing. She's going to go on to be an incredibly successful writer. this guy over here is going to be an engineer and math is his thing. And this is, he is here. I mean, especially doing, teaching your, writing 121 kinds of courses. Not everybody is bound for this. And I think that's a benefit to us then when we're doing a reading going, there's somebody here who is here with a partner and they are, on a sad third date for them. And they are listening to this, and how do I make this still a pleasurable experience for them? Because this is not their first choice for things.
That's going to be my target. You know how they're like, picture people in your underwear? I'm going to picture people on their sad third date, and I'm going to make it an awesome third date for them.
Yes. You've been roped into this thing and you didn't think you were going to enjoy it, and then somebody was throwing something at you. Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Let's see. I wanted to ask about, sometimes I'll post a kind of a weekly poll. I'm pretty bad about remembering to actually post them, but if you had a question for the universe, what would be your weekly poll question?
My weekly poll question is cake or pie, which I think is a classic.
Yes.
I think there is a correct answer, and I married someone who answered incorrectly.
And how have you navigated that? Do you end up with cake and pie?
Well, today's actually his birthday, so he ordered. Well, I don't want to give away his answer or what I think is the correct.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine. We can put an elbow on the scale and tell people what the correct
Okay. Well, the correct answer is obviously pie, because like cream pie, berry pie, like it's delicious.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person where if you put it in front of me, I will consume either. So it does not slow me down at all. I'm not even sure I have a preference, which I think might be a really dangerous hot take. Like that might really get me canceled. Not having a strong.
Oh, you don't have a.
I'm not. Right. I love them both.
I mean, that's a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I know. Which, it depends. Really moist cake. It's got to be really moist cake. And it's got to have the pie's got to have the right crust. So, but I'll eat any of them and to try it, even if it's a cake where I'm like, this cake is dry and terrible, and I'm still continuing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's make it a given that you're not saying it's not a binary. It's which one you prefer. We know you're going to eat the other one.
Oh yeah. So I'm at a place where I get to choose. And I've got to choose when I'm ordering my dessert. They bring by the dessert tray and all of the things look fantastic. Which way do I even go? I'm going to have to give this one some thought. So how are you handling this for your partner's birthday?
Well, the person whose birthday it is gets to say what they want. And he picked a black and white cake with chocolate ganache and strawberry filling. He's very particular. And it will be a delicious cake. But the reason he doesn't like pie is because he'd rather, he thinks it's an unnecessarily adulterated version of fruit. He'd rather just have the fresh fruit.
Oh.
He's pure of heart.
On that. In fact, I think I would rather have all of my fruit in pie filling variety.
Totally. That's the correct answer.
Yeah. Just, you could take those apples or you could make them into apple pie filling, and I would be much happier with them.
Yes.
Such. Yeah. But I do like a cobbler, something like that too. Yeah. Oh, that's. Yeah, that's.
See, I like the puddings and mousses. I like all that stuff, which can be put into a pie.
Yeah. Like a French silk pie. Oh, yeah. That is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cheesecake is. It straddles. Is cheesecake a pie? Is cheesecake a cake?
I think we have to classify it as a cake.
I mean, it's got a crust.
But if you said your answer's cheesecake, I'd be like, you're just a closeted pie person.
Okay, I see. Well, enjoy that cake, even though it is not the pie that you wanted. So my partner and I'm getting married this summer, and we've been talking about what we're going to do for the reception. And we were thinking, you get those things that are the tiers. Instead of having a tiered cake, what if each layer was something different? And so we will have pie. We will have different kinds of cake, and we're just going to have them. And people can come up and go, I don't want the wedding cake topper kind of cake. Oh, there's pie here. Oh, there's cheesecake here. So we're just going to layer them and
that's so great
choices. Yeah.
Love
But
it.
there are some things that both of us don't like. We're like, no, that just doesn't make it on. People
Great.
may like that thing. Sorry, it's our our wedding reception. So
Other people's weddings, they can have their preferences.
yes, but we are going to give them some options. So
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
But even choosing what kind of pie is going to be, challenging. I am not a
It'd be tough.
cherry fan. I don't like cherries. I think your husband's choice of a strawberry ganache in a that sounds divine. So
It
I
does sound delightful.
uh, jealous there. So what is in your to read pile right now? What do you look? I already shared the mine is the local news is my next book. I'm taking
Yay.
it with me on the airplane. So what is your
Awesome.
next?
Okay, this is what I'm currently reading. This is Tell the Machine Goodnight by Katie Williams. This is the second book I'm reading from her. I read My Mystery. You'd like her. She is like a speculative literary fiction writer.
Yes, which I love. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
that literary moniker is just it's good. Like she writes good sci-fi. Excellent.
Totally. And it's all like it's like this world but not.
Yeah.
Okay, then this I impulse bought last time I was at a bookstore. It's Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. But hang on, I need to like give you, if you ask about so these are all the things competing.
Yes.
There's No Empty Spaces by DJ Green, who I'm reading with at Broadway Books in May. So I'm really excited to read this. This is a debut novel. Okay, so you can help me pick which. This I started reading and didn't really get that into it. It's The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. It was on a bunch of look at that. I kind of love how it's a big chunk of a book.
Yeah, it's a doorstop.
I handed it to a friend because I was like, I'm not that into it right now, but I will be. And then she's like, it's extraordinary. So I got it back. And finally, Thorn by Evan Morgan Williams. He's a Portland writer.
Yes. I had him on the show. He's fantastic.
Oh, he is. He was on one of your early ones, like very early.
Yes, but I have not read Thorn yet, so I will have to check that out.
So this is what it's always like. Here's the stack. I'm holding up a stack as tall as my head of what I'm choosing.
My desk right now. What was the first one about though? The houses.
The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store.
No, the one that was it shows the image of a house.
The Tell the Machine Goodnight.
Tell the Machine Goodnight. What's that about?
Okay, this is about, it's 2035 and this woman works for this company that has the Apracity machine, which you swab your DNA and and you put it in, feed it into the machine, and it tells you what you need to be happy. So she works there doing this, and in the meantime, she has this absolutely miserable son at home who's like never happy. And then behind the scenes at the company, they are trying to change the Apracity machine. So when people swab, it tells them what they need to be in power rather than to be happy. So it's all these different little offshoots of this machine that dictates your happiness or suggests what you need to do for your happiness. Here, I'll tell you it opens into a scene called The Happiness Machine, and it is how am I going to be able to find it quickly? He should eat the person who swabs his DNA. It gives him a list of 3 things. He should eat tangerines on a regular basis. He should work at a desk that receives morning light, and he should amputate the uppermost section of his right index finger.
I'm in. That's it. That was all it took, was the 3rd thing. And I'm like, yep, this book is right up my alley. Oh, that's totally really good.
That gives you a great sense of her sensibility. She's just such a smart writer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one I will check out. And I'll post links to those too in the show notes. So if folks were going, oh, it's the 3rd one that jumped out at me. Okay, I'll post all those. So you already mentioned folks can get to you, find you through the website. What are some other places where they can follow you online?
Great. I am still on Twitter, Miriam Gershow, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Blue Sky for people who were checking out Twitter alternatives. I've been, once Elon Musk sort of blew up Twitter, I went back to Facebook after like a 10-year break from it, and now I'm a little addicted to that again. So, and that's the one place that I'm M. Gershow, not Miriam Gershow. So you can find me. I spend enough time procrastinating on social media that really you can find me on any of those.
Right. Yes, we have to be where the readers are. I mean, folks are, there are sites that I feel terrible about, and yet I have to be on them because that's where the readers are.
Are you on TikTok?
Yes, I am on TikTok, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Hive, Threads. Yeah, gotta be on all of them. And some of them I hardly ever go to. Mastodon and Hive haven't really taken off, but I'm there. But yeah, I've got to be, any place somebody might go, oh, I
Right.
should check out one of his books. Yes, I'm there yelling, into the
Mhm.
void. Uh, so who else should I have on this show?
All right. So have you not had Kate on here?
Kate and I did an episode together when we both had a joint book launch. So I've had Kate, but not one-on-one. Oh, no, in fact, Kate and I have done 2 live events. We did one
Oh,
down in Southern Oregon as well, but I've not had her one-on-one as a guest. And she would be, Kate, folks who know Kate are going, yeah, absolutely. She's just wonderful. So I should get Kate on again.
yes. Okay. And then now I'm going to make a push for Eugene representation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the poet Cecilia Hagen, you should have on. She's amazing. And she's really funny. Melissa Hart, who's written a zillion books. Deborah Gortney, who is a nonfiction writer and memoirist and like the smartest person I know. So those are 3 Eugenians. And then there is Heather Ryan, who's up in Olympia, and Kim Johnson, who's on the East Coast now, but both of them were former Eugenians and writers. And all these people are excellent talkers.
Yeah.
Because not all writers are good talkers.
Right. Yes.
But so any of those to up the Eugene representation.
Okay, so I've got a project. Increase the Eugene representation on the show. I will see if I
Excellent.
can get those folks. That would be great. So before we get to our send off and Miriam gives her final advice to our listeners, I want to thank some folks. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for the intro to our show, the song I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks, as always, to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention that Writers Not Writing is a production of Not a Pipe Publishing, so please go to notapipepublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Check out Miriam's new survival tips stories this next week. And when you get your copy and you have torn through it, please click on that 5th star, write a little review, and we'll make Miriam's day. It really makes a big difference to authors. And in the meantime, if you're listening to this the day the show drops, you've got a few days to read the local news with me, and then we could talk about it before the next book drops. So check that one out as well. And, click on the thumbs up for this show too. That would be really nice. It makes a big difference. And if you write a funny review, we'll read it on the show. So feel free. So Miriam, what is it that you would like folks to know as they go into their week this week?
Okay, I would like to leave you with the idea that there is no such thing as a guilty pleasure. Banish the guilt and love what you love.
Oh, I love it. And I also tell people, a novel without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives without spaces would be gibberish as well, meaningless as well. So give yourself those spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Miriam and I are still proud of you.
It's true.
If I take my time,